Hi everyone. I am coming to you after a very messy, turbulent uh, couple of weeks. And I want to share what I've been going through in case it would be helpful for somebody else who is going through a healing process similar to mine. Trying to do this emotional detox thing, and in the way of, with the goal of getting out of some chronic health condition, which is what I'm doing. I had been better. I had been doing so much better for a while because I've been on this healing process for. I started healing trauma and wounds and emotional toxicity June of 2020, and within a month I already started seeing positive changes in my health. So I kept going. No matter how ugly, how messy, how horrible it was worth it. It is always worth it because, well, first of all, the wounds are never as bad as you believe them to be. Because you, not you, but your inner child believes them to be, and that's who is keeping you in this illness, this ill state, because your inner child is scared. And I'm talking to people whose chronic fatigue or adrenal fatigue is rooted in emotional toxicity. And that might not be everyone, but I know it's a lot of people. And the hardest part in some ways is the recognizing that's true for you. That was the hardest part for me. Not that healing the stuff is easy. It takes a lot of time and a lot of patience, and I am still in the thick of it. Man, am I still in the thick of it. And that was almost a year ago. Because right now it's April of 2021. So where I am right now, as I'm going through this healing process, I get triggered a lot. Is what I'm finding, which is a good thing, because every time you're triggered is an opportunity to heal something. And that is the biggest gift to see, because when you're triggered, usually all you can see is the darkness. When you're triggered, you enter into a triggered state. You kind of spiral into, it's how it feels to me. I feel like there's a period, as I've witnessed this happen over and over again in the past 9-10 months. What happens is there's a period of time that's spiraling. You're spiraling, and sometimes it's quick, and sometimes it happens over. It's like sometimes it's so quick it happens like in seconds, moments, as you're spiraling into this state. And then other times, like this last time that I got triggered, it took days to land in the triggered state. You know what's interesting? When I landed, it was like I was in the thick of my illness. I had horrible brain fog, horrible fatigue, weakness, blood pressure problems, shakiness, food cravings, all the things, but the fatigue. The fatigue was the worst, and that's been the worst, the most difficult and pervasive symptom through this whole thing. And that's true for anybody, I think, with adrenal fatigue or chronic fatigue. Fatigue is the first symptom. It's the first thing that shows up, and it's the most pervasive through the whole process. And it's the last thing, I know that it's going to be the last thing to leave. So I had a trigger about a week and a half ago, and I didn't realize it took a couple weeks for me. It's taken about 10 days since I was triggered to figure out that I was triggered. I couldn't, even after all this time, I couldn't see what was happening. And it's because the way you're triggered and then where you land is different every time. And if you have a lot of wounds, like I seem to, well, all of us do. We all have a lot of wounds from our life. If we are not taught, and who is, from an early age, how to deal with wounds as they come or shortly after they happen, and to process emotional things in a healthy way, and go back to childhood and heal the childhood wounds, and then from that point forward, know how to process and release wounds and emotions that come in as your life goes on. That's where I'm going. That's what I'm trying to learn how to do. And I just feel like I'm flailing around trying to figure this out because it's so clear to me that I had no idea. I just have no idea how to do any of this. I just feel like I'm so clueless, and it feels like something that should be natural in a human being, and yet it's not. It's something that I think my guess would be that we're actually supposed to learn this from our culture. But we live, unfortunately, in a quite a toxic culture now. And I think more and more people are seeing the toxicity of our culture. Particularly the patriarchal aspect of it. That the patriarchal society creates a lot of toxicity, especially for women. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself because, see where I'm going here. In my last video, I was talking a lot about my lymph because in the past couple months, my lymph system is what is screaming at me. It's the next symptom that needs help. It needs healing. And even though it's been a problem throughout my illness, and especially in the last 2 years, I've healed a lot of other things, and this is still stuck, and my body keeps telling me this is what needs to heal now. The stomach distension, the puffiness in the face, puffiness in the legs, but the stomach distension is the loudest to me because it's so uncomfortable. And the feeling of fullness that you have and you don't want to eat, and yet I have this perpetual yearning to eat when that happens. Okay, so the lymph is a primary liquid in your body, right? And in the past couple months, I've also started this process of healing trauma and wounds by using the chakras. So through the chakras is how I'm healing these wounds, because the chakras, so wherever the chakra is that you have, so you go by your symptoms. So whatever symptoms that you have, this is how I'm doing it. So when I have a symptom that I want to heal, I start looking at, well, where is that located in the body and what chakra might that be? Usually it correlates with directly where that is. For example, my lymph problems are in my abdomen. My abdomen can get so huge sometimes that it's probably the size of a 7-month pregnancy, I would say. It is so uncomfortable. It is so uncomfortable. Anybody who's had stomach distension, like severe stomach distension, knows how miserable it is. And it'll go up and down, but it'll last for days or weeks. Or if you don't figure out like what you're eating or something to help, oh, it's just miserable. You wake up bloated, you go to sleep even more bloated. It's all day. And it's worse after you eat, and it's so uncomfortable. You just feel huge. It's more uncomfortable than being pregnant. I didn't find pregnancy that uncomfortable. Because there's a being in you that's supposed to be in you, but this is like it's all this pressure in there that's pushing out. Okay, so I'm thinking about my abdomen, I'm thinking about my abdomen and just like, well, what chakras are there? Or you've got your solar plexus, but that's like up here. That's not, I've had GI issues up there. I've had gastritis in my stomach, and your liver's up there. But if you go a little lower, so your sacral chakra is under your belly button. Well, that's exactly where, if I were to pinpoint the center of where my distension is coming from, it is there. It's this lower abdomen, and it stretches out way down until my pubic bone. That's sacral chakra. Well, then I start reading about the sacral chakra, and I learn, oh, okay, the sacral chakra has to do with all the liquids. It's connected to the water element, and so it's connected to all the fluids in your body: blood, sweat, tears, lymph. I'm forgetting some, but you get the point. It's all the liquids. So then I'm thinking, okay, then that means, based on my experience thus far, that means that I have wounds in my sacral chakra that I need to heal in order to get my lymph flowing again, in order to deal with this. Okay, and that's sort of the process of, it's simple when I say it. It's so simple, of healing wounds through the chakras. You use the chakra as this sort of information piece, because you know where your symptoms are. You know what they are. If you have thyroid symptoms, well, what chakra is that? That's your throat. If you have breast or heart or lung or trapezoid pain or issues or anything, that's all your heart chakra. If you have pelvic pain or bowel problems or like coccyx, those things are root chakra. Also symptoms in your legs. If you have symptoms in your legs and knees and feet, ankles, particularly indicate some root chakra issues. Migraines. So, they all, if you have a symptom, you know that symptom well. and so trying to go through all of your symptoms and connecting them to a chakra can be very helpful. Now, all the chakras are connected in a lot of ways. And so there can be some overlap, there can be some, complex dynamics there, but it's a great way to get started. And because, especially when, so our behaviors, our patterns get so ingrained in us, and so many of the wounds that are connected with chronic fatigue and adrenal fatigue happened pre-verbal or in the first 7 years of life, when your foundation was being made, and all of your sort of the neural pathways and sort of the basic structure of your brain and nervous system were being created. The first 7 years plus time in your mother's womb is included in that too. And obviously we're not, we don't have we don't have a memory of that. We don't know the things that happen. So that's why early life trauma and early life difficult to heal, because you don't have a specific memory a lot of times. If it happened at 5, 6, 7, maybe you do. But if it was earlier than that, you might not, and that makes it really difficult, especially if it was happened to you like when you were 1, 2, 0. Verbal belief to create. You had a belief. A belief was created, but it wasn't created in words, and so you can't even really remember that. Sometimes you can figure out how it comes out verbal, and once you became verbal, how that started to manifest. But it's just a more sort of windy path and more work. It takes more time because you have to and attuned to what your patterns are and what dynamics are going on. And there's always an automatic way of thinking about things, and being able to be conscious enough to want to, and it takes a lot of, so I was talking about triggers. I started on this wound healing stuff like 10 months ago, and I know that I have been triggered about the same thing like a million times, and I couldn't, you can't always see it. But the more you learn, the more you heal, the more aware you are, the more practiced you become at it. Someday something's going to happen and you're going to be able to see, oh my gosh, that reminds me, this week I was in this triggered state. Okay, so I put a video out there 10 days ago. I had never gone live before. Making videos has been something I wanted to do for a couple years now. And my fear has been so great because my whole life has been spent, because there's no internal validation happening, or there wasn't, prior to this illness. And I didn't realize that, obviously. I didn't realize that I depended so heavily on scent of external validation. And this is why I had just a mortal fear. It felt fatal to do public speaking, because all of a sudden I have to be seen. My brain is being seen, and that is, no, it can't happen. It cannot happen. It was too risky for me. It felt life-threatening, literally. And when something feels life-threatening that's not life-threatening, that the original wound was when you were a child. Why? Because everything is life-threatening when you're a child, because love is survival or not. And so your ability to get love means whether you survive or not when you're a child. That's born into all of us. And so not caregivers as a child is life-threatening to a child. Because we completely depend on our caregivers to give us care. And if they don't love us, why would they care for us? Babies are so hard. The reason that we care for them is because we love them. Okay, so this video. I have had a mortal fear. I went live in a Facebook group that I'm part of. And it was terrifying. And I was so scared. But I did it. The first time. I've been just too terrified. That has been a never. My inner child has been saying that. And so I finally did it. And God, I was so proud of myself. And I was on a high for a couple of hours and a couple of views. And people said nice things. Looking back, I realized as the hours passed, I started really sinking. I started on just by putting myself out there and not getting like a gushing response, which is ridiculous and completely unrealistic. And I knew that in my mind, and yet I had this spiraling. I started on the spiral, and I didn't know that's what was happening. I started to feel down, and I started to feel some shame, and I showed the people closest to me the video, and I started realizing when I'm showing this, I'm feeling really embarrassed. I'm feeling really like a lot of shame, and really no response that they could have given would have been good enough. And that's the case with the comments on the video too, because it is such a sensitive trigger for me, and so obviously something that I need to heal. But again, I didn't see that this was really a spiral down. And then a couple days later, all of a sudden, I had landed this toxic soup, and my health was really bad suddenly. It felt like health. It didn't feel emotional, and yet I felt there was some emotional components. I felt detached. I felt numb, but I also felt sad. Sad and numb at the same time. I also had bursts of anger, irritation. And looking back, I can so clearly see I was in a triggered state. And the triggered state manifests for me in my health. My health gets worse, way worse when I am in a triggered state. And why am I in a triggered state? Not only was I triggered, but I didn't see the spiral fast enough or quick enough to stop it and heal it while it was happening. I mean, even if I did see it, would I have known how to heal it in that moment? I don't know. Well, the last few days, I've been really trying to focus on this and figure this out. And has been so helpful to know my process up till now, and to have so much proof that my illness is energetic. My illness is emotional at its core, but deep emotions, deeply rooted wounds that are in the core of my being, and part of the core of my being is my body. So I've been trying to make sense of this, and I was in such a dark into a little argument with my mom without meaning to, and she started getting upset. She said something like, well, just like, don't go there. Because I guess I was projecting onto her, and I didn't realize that I was projecting. I'm really good at projecting some things, I've realized. So if I'm feeling a certain way about myself, I start feeling it being mirrored in everybody else around me. So if I'm not liking myself, I start feeling like everyone around is mad at me. They don't like me. What's going on? I just feel like no one likes me, and no one wants to be around me, and everyone's irritated with me. Well, that's not true. What's outside, I'm not liking myself. And I am completely void of self-love in that moment. Inner child needs love in that moment, and I'm not giving it to her. Now, I can't see that in the moment, or I didn't used to be able to. But being able to recognize these things. So I started to get into this argument, and she said, don't go there. You're assuming I feel things that I don't feel. And I was confused why she was starting to get sort of defensive and annoyed with me, because I didn't think I was doing anything. I thought I was being accurate. And then something came out of my mouth that is just unbelievable. I said, I don't understand why you're upset. All I'm doing is trying to apologize for existing. And as soon as that came out of my mouth, I was like, what? What the hell was that? Who says that? Who thinks that? And yet, I had been thinking that for a day or 2 days, 3 days, 4, I don't even know how long. I've thought this for years. I have apologized for my existence for so many years. The way I shrink, the way I don't want to be seen. I don't want to be seen by anybody. I don't want people to even have the opportunity to judge my brain, my intelligence. No, I have been trying to be invisible my whole life. But for me to verbalize it, because all of a sudden because I've had this thought a million times, but all of a sudden when I verbalized it, I could so clearly see how, like, shocking that was. That's not a healthy thought. And the thing is, that's so crazy, is that while thoughts are thoughts, they don't seem so crazy. And sometimes, this has happened so many times for me, when I verbalize a thought, all of a sudden it's like, oh, that's not healthy. That's not a healthy thought. So then, and also in these same few days, intense self-soothe and eat chocolate, which I can't eat right now because it's high in oxalates. All day, and coffee, all day, white, good, bad, mostly bad, mostly bad. Everything's yes, no, but mostly no. Everything's negative, dark, can't, won't, nope. It's like you touch a wound, you trigger one wound, and all the wounds that you have in your whole body come out at the same time. Because all the beliefs that are connected to that, all the beliefs that you've made from that wound and from all the other wounds in your life, just flood your system. That's how it feels. And how do you see through that? I'm trying to figure this out. I actually want to know. So if you can tell me, but I'm figuring that out myself. So this process for me has been to figure out these things in this long way. And this is sort of a microcosm of that I'm seeing this trigger in this long, sort of extended period of a couple weeks, where I'm just starting to realize what has happened in the last couple weeks, that I had a trigger, and that was all of the health issues that I've had for the last 2 weeks are all because of that trigger. It took me 2 weeks to figure that out, that it was even connected to that I created. Nothing to do with the outside world, and yet on the outside world to come back at me. I brought up the coffee and the chocolate and the sweets. I was craving sweets so bad, and I just wanted to eat and eat and eat and eat. And I realized, actually, why am I having urges to self-sabotage? Meanwhile, while I'm thinking these things, I don't realize I'm in a triggered state. I didn't realize that I was in a triggered state until today, which is why I'm making this video. So I was realizing, so I'm having this urge to self-sabotage. And I said this thing about not apologizing for existing. And then my lymph symptoms are all the same. So I started Googling. And this is how I'm doing it. So this is my process. You know, something happens, I connect it to the whole process that I've just described in the last 30 minutes, it's then I start Googling. Not before then, because if you just start going down the route, you're not going to get very far. You're going to get all the solutions that are purely physical, and you're not going to get to the root. If your root cause is emotional wounding and emotional toxicity, then you're not going to get very far with that. Believe me. I tried that route. That, that I have been down that road so many times. Heavy researching, heavy researching, and just focusing on the physical, the physical, the physical, the physical. And it just doesn't. And I try all these things, and you spend all this money and all this time and all this hope, and then you're disappointed. You're still stuck. But when you connect these things to the emotions, you connect these things to the spiritual, that's when you can make some progress. I can prove it with my own experience. So I started Googling things like self-sabotage and sacral chakra and lymph all together, and some combination of that. I think maybe the one that finally got me somewhere was the one about lymph. No, not I didn't include lymph. It was about self-sabotage and sacral chakra. And I found a really good website about the mother wound that really spoke to me, and I haven't done the healing and all of it that goes with it, but I feel like it was an important step, because it finally was telling me, giving me some clues as to what the wound could be in the sacral chakra. Because again, I don't have memories, and all these, a lot of these things are insidious. A lot of these things aren't even in your childhood from your parents, they're also from society. And we just soak that in. We don't even realize we do it, and we feel like, that's just, we have to soak that stuff in order to survive in our culture and not be rejected. So we sort of have to do that. But I just wanted to describe sort of the process. I think this is a good example. Again, sort of a microcosm of the extensive 10-month process that I've been on for different chakras, for different. Well, that's not totally true. I was not initially working with the chakras to heal this stuff, but I have started to find that it's extremely helpful in figuring things out that I don't have specific memories of, or that are so insidious in they're so pervasive that I can't see the abnormality of it. Not abnormality, I shouldn't say that. The dysfunction of it. Because that's the only way I've functioned. And so I wouldn't choose consciously a dysfunctional way of living. These are unconscious dysfunctions. So a lot of time we need help. We need help figuring out what is functional, what's dysfunctional in our lives. Because all we know is what we are and what we've been. We don't know yet who we're going to be, and we've got to figure out how to do that, how to become something we want. And in order to do that, you have to dismantle the dysfunctional patterns, and those come from wounded self, parts of